Hi everybody, this is Baby Lolita, and you're at Baby Love Sports, where sports and gaming is the exquisite fusion. Welcome to the channel. This is all about college sports, and we're going to get into the talk right now. So, how's everybody doing? A lot of suspense has been happening. I'm feeling pretty good. I hope that you're feeling really good too. Now, we are in what we call the spooky season. That's right, but I'm so glad that you are here. Alright, so you know, I have a live stream right here on the channel talking about the fiasco with the SWAC. But we will not dive in that here. We're going to be talking sports, so having some good funners. Let's get ready to rock. The thunder has started, and we are ready to go through this lightning experience, talking all things HBCU sports, college, football, and from there, we'll be going forward with more college football and then more NFL talk. So if that sounds good to you, let's get into it. I have a beautiful candle right here. Okay, Day of the Dead. Feliz Dia de Muertos. And it's so cool and it's so dope. So I'm gonna light it up. Maybe I better tilt it. Alright, so we got good vibes going on here. And my two Scullys, okay? And of course, this is Hear No Evil, See No Evil, but the Speak No Evil. I just couldn't find that skull. I was like, Well, I do have a gift of gab, so I couldn't find it. Of course, I have my Darkalicious nails on. I have my skull pin ready to go. So you can catch a lot of my unboxing and story time on my cigar channel, Cigar St. Sister, right here on YouTube, as well as the live adventures where I'm out and about. That will be on Cigar St. Sister Live. So you can catch both of those channels. Now, before I get into these scores and all that talk, I'm going to have a nice bloody cocktail, okay? And it has the Day of the Dead skulls on it, so it's really good. Oh my goodness, it's delicious. I had a willing participant come over, so I drained them a little bit. It was all consensual. And here I have some beautiful bloody pieces of uncooked rib tips. Okay, just bloody delicious from a human rib. Delicious. So if I'm making you hungry, that's a good thing. I'll wipe my hands. All right, so let's get into the talk. There's been a lot of excitement over the past weekend. So we're going to go straight to these scoreboards. But before we do, I want to give some shout outs to some homecomings that are coming up this weekend. And the homecomings that have passed, if early on in the know. First, you had AAMU, you had Bluefield State. These are HBCU homecomings. You had Bowie State, you had FVSU, Lincoln University of Missouri, and Winston-Salem State University, which is very, very early, you know, October the 1st. But one good thing about it, if you have cousins, siblings, boyfriend, girlfriend type situations, husband and wife, alumni, and stuff like that, it's good if you didn't go to the same schools and you have different dates of homecoming, so that works out really, really good. And then October 8th, which has passed, was Alabama State. You know, all that riffraff that was going on with Jackson State there. Central State, Fayetteville State, Lane, Lincoln, PA, Morgan State, Morris Brown, Savannah State, UAPB, Virginia State, Virginia Union, and West Virginia State. They had their homecomings this past weekend. And I hope all of them were lit. Okay, October 15th, Albany State, Clark Atlanta University. That's coming up this weekend. Elizabeth City State, Kentucky State, Livingstone, Miles, Norfolk State, South Carolina State University, go Bulldogs, and SAU. Then on the 22nd, you have Alcorn State, Allen University, which is my parents' alma mater, Hampton University has a homecoming, and Howard University, Jackson State, Johnson C. Smith, Golden Bulls, MVSU, Langston, Morehouse, Shaw, and Southern. Then going into spooky season week, October 29th, it's going to be Benedict's homecoming, Delaware State, FAMU, Harris-Stowe, North Carolina A&T, Aggies, G-Ho, okay, greatest homecoming on earth. Texas Southern, PBAMU. Then on November 5th is Bethune-Cookman, Edward Waters, Florida Memorial, North Carolina Central University, Paul Quinn, Grambling, and Tuskegee. On November the 12th, it's going to be Fisk, Texas Southern, Philander Smith, and UMES. And then on November 19th, it's going to be Claflin. And then to be announced is going to be Cheney, Morris College, Talladega, Voorhees, VUI, Wiley, and Zula, Xula. Now I'm going to go back here because okay, yeah, that was it. I was looking for Tennessee State. They already had theirs this past weekend. So those are the homecoming events, everybody. So there it is. And it's going to be a lot of events leading up to everybody's homecoming. So if that is your alma mater, or if you plan to go, you know, try to go to some of the events that have like the coronations and stuff like that, because it's really going to be a good time. All right, so let's get into these scores for the scoreboard, and we're going to start with the CIAA conference. Football scores on the scoreboard was Elizabeth City State Vikings. They did not score, and Virginia Union Panthers would take that game 49-0. And then you had Johnson C. Smith, Golden Bulls. They would win that one 22 over Shaw Bears 18. Then you would have Winston-Salem State, the Rams, 17, and Livingstone Blue Bears would take that 2017. Chowan faced off with Lincoln, PA, and they would win Chowan 16-14. St. Augustine's Falcons could not make the board. Fayetteville State Broncos 54-0. Now that was a blowout. Okay. And then you had Bowie State Bulldogs and Virginia State Trojans. The Bulldogs would take that one 41-14. So then we're going to get into the statistics in the CIAA, and I picked the game to get into the statistics. That would be Johnson, C. Smith, and Shaw. All right, so here's how it went down. When you talk about team stats, Shaw would be first, Johnson, C. Smith would be second. On the first downs, it was 12 for Shaw, 18 for Johnson, C. Smith. And in rushing, it was 9 for Shaw, 4 for Johnson, C. Smith. Passing, 1 for Shaw, and 11 for Johnson, C. Smith passing. And then the penalties, it was 2 and 3. Rushing, 133 for Shaw, 66 for Johnson, C. Smith. And then the attempts were 33 to 39. Then when we get into average per rush, it was 4 for Shaw and 1.7 for Johnson, C. Smith. In the completions, it was 7 for Shaw and 20 for Johnson, C. Smith. Interceptions, 1 for Shaw and 3 for Johnson, C. Smith. So when you get those turnovers right there, it does make up for that penalty factor that happened where it was just 1 up for Johnson, C. Smith. All right, average per pass, 6 for Shaw and Johnson, C. Smith, 13. Total offense, 175 for Shaw and 325 total offense for Johnson, C. Smith. The plays were 57 to 80. And then you had the average per play was 3.1 for Shaw and 4.1 for Johnson, C. Smith. And then what I like to also look at after the average per play is the fumbles, the numbers and the loss. It was 3 of 1 for Shaw and 1 of 1 for Johnson, C. Smith. The penalties was 8 of 85 for Shaw and 3 of 28 for Johnson, C. Smith. Punting, it was 7-265 for Shaw and 6-182 for Johnson, C. Smith. Now, let's see. Anything sticks out. Interceptions, returns, numbers, and yards was 3 of 51 for Shaw and 1 and 0 for Johnson, C. Smith. Third down conversions, 2 of 13 for Shaw, 6 of 17 for Johnson, C. Smith. And fourth down conversions was 1 of 3 for Shaw and 3 of 3 for Johnson, C. Smith. And then the time of possession of the ball, which I always pretty much go straight to look at. I don't know why I didn't do that now, but Shaw had like 25 minutes, 55 seconds total possession of the ball and 34 of 404. Now here's how it broke down in the quarters. Shaw's starting drive was at the Johnson Smith 49. And then Sidney Gibbs rushed for 5 yards to the Sidney Gibbs rushed for 8 yards to the Smiths 36, which gave them a first down. And then Sidney Gibbs rushed for 5 yards to 31. And then Christian Peters, he rushed for 3 yards to Johnson Smith's 28. And then there was a fumble by Christian Peters, who recovered by Jaquil Webb at the JSCU territory 11, and then gave them a first down. Sidney Gibbs, he also rushed for 1 yard to the Johnson Smith 10-yard line. And then there was a completed pass from Christian Peters to Sidney Gibbs for 6 yards to the JCSU 4. And then Sidney Gibbs rushed for 4 yards to the Johnson Smith, giving them a first down. And then they had a touchdown. Then Devin Vertestegen, he did a kick attempt, and it failed. Blocked. It was blocked by Jaquarius Smith. Okay. And then Armand Nagra did a kickoff 50-yard lines to Johnson Smith 15. And then Jaron Hall returned 12 yards to the Johnson Smith 27. All right. And so what we're seeing here is that there was a touchdown in the first quarter by Shaw. And then after 10 plays, 67 yards, there was a touchdown for Smith. And then in the second quarter, it was a touchdown after 10 plays at the 63 yard. Then there was a field goal attempt after 7 plays at the 65 yard. And then Shaw answered back with another field goal. Third quarter, there was a safety for 5 plays. And in the fourth quarter, Johnson Smith knew they had to go ahead and dominate, and they did, bring in the only touchdown after 14 plays at the 58-yard line. All right, so then we go over to the SEAC, and this is going to be Fort Valley State Wildcats facing off with Central State, and they would beat them 32-17. Miles Golden Bears facing off with the Benedict Tigers would be 23. So the Tigers brought home that win. And then you had Virginia Lynchburg 14, the Savannah State Tigers 28. Kentucky Thoroughbreds 31 to Lane Dragons 26. Clark Atlanta Panthers, they would score 42. Allen 41. That was a very close game. We're going to take a look at that close game by the numbers. Albany State 55 and Edward Waters 7. And then you had Morehouse 14 and Tuskegee Golden Tigers 31-14. So the Tigers would win that over Morehouse. All right, so let's take a look at this Clark Atlanta versus Allen game by 1 point. 1 point is 1 point, and a win is a win. So there you have it for Clark Atlanta. Now, I'm not going to go through their full stats, but I'm just going to go through the things that kind of made a difference from what I'm seeing. First downs for Clark Atlanta, they were pretty much evenly matched. 17 for Clark Atlanta, Allen 18. In rushing, they were definitely evenly matched. Passing, evenly matched, no big glare there. Penalties, just 1 for Clark Atlanta, 0 for Allen University. And in rushing, Allen pretty much dominated. That was 142 for the look over at Clark Atlanta for 127. And then you would have penalties, no penalties for Allen, 1 for Clark Atlanta. And then you would have completions, 19 completions for Allen and 10 completions for Clark Atlanta. With this one, it just seems like there was a time right there because they were evenly matching interceptions, 1 of 1. And same for plays, 65 to 60. Interceptions, they were even. Both had 1. Third down conversions, 6 of 15 for Clark Atlanta, and for Allen, 4 of 11. Fourth down conversions, 2 of 4 for Shaw, and for Allen, 2 of 3. In the first quarter, it seems that Allen University scored first, okay? Plot, strategize, and you bomb first. All right, I showed some love there to Tupac. But they scored the first touchdown, and then they came right back with a second touchdown, okay? First quarter was lit. After 2 touchdowns, Clark Atlanta answered back at the 59-yard line. The second touchdown from Allen University was 80 yards, and the first touchdown was 35 yards. So they were doing some balling, just trying to score quick. They did not let that 1 touchdown in the first quarter detach them, and so they came back with another touchdown. Okay, better look out for Allen University. All right, so that's 3 just in the first quarter. All right, so answering back in the second quarter, you would have Clark answer back twice. They had a 60-yard touchdown, then they ran the other one straight into the end zone. And then after their 2 in the second quarter, Allen answered back at a 40-yard touchdown after 5 plays. And then they would answer back again in the third quarter, 45 yards. And then 82 yards, twice, still no answer. Fourth quarter is where it seems like all the momentum got lost, but it was just 1 point, see? And that's when Clark Atlanta at the 68-yard line and the 76-yard line, they scored those touchdowns. And thus that was the game. Next we have, okay, the SWAC. Grambling State Tigers 31, Alabama A&M Bulldogs 37. Alabama Bulldogs would pull that out. Then you had Texas Southern Tigers, and that would be 24 to Arkansas Pine Bluff Lions 17. Florida A&M Rattlers faced off with South Carolina State Bulldogs. Score would be 20-14, and that is the game that we'll be taking a look at. Jackson State Tigers 26 to Alabama State Hornets 12. Okay, wasn't a blowout. Southern 43 to Prairie View 13. So Southern would take that. Bethune-Cookman faced off with Tennessee State 17 and Tennessee State 41. I know my cousin loves that, Cedric. And also, you're going to have Bethune-Cookman face off with Jackson State this coming weekend in Jacksonville. So it's going to be a lot of people descending down there for that bowl, and we'll just see who's the victor. Will Jackson State stay dominant, or will there be an upset? Then you would have Alcorn facing off with Mississippi Valley, and they would dominate 37. Go Alcorn. All right, Grambling and Florida A&M, it was 31-37. First downs pretty much evenly matched, 18 and 20. Then you would have penalties. Grambling would be in the penalty bucket there for an Alabama A&M would be 0. In passing, 230 for Alabama A&M and 170 for Grambling. Interception, 1 interception from Grambling. 14 completions to 21. Alabama A&M would dominate. And then the total offense, 414 is what Alabama A&M had versus 278 for Grambling. Let's see if anything else sticks out. The possession, the time possession of the ball. 45 minutes and 16 seconds for Alabama A&M. They would dominate that with 29:43 on the clock for Grambling. Yeah. All right, so this game did become quite tense if you look at the quarters. In the first quarter, you had a touchdown by Arkansas. Oh, sorry, not Arkansas, Alabama A&M. Then the second quarter, Grambling scored a touchdown at 74 yards, and it was a 70-yard touchdown for Alabama A&M. Not much action in between those two quarters. And then in the third quarter, you had double touchdowns there from Alabama. 87-yard touchdown after 9 plays. And then they did a field goal with 4 plays. Then in the fourth quarter, Grambling came back with a 76-yard touchdown after 12 plays. Touchdown for Alabama A&M with 75 yards and 9 plays. Then Grambling would answer back with 71 yards and 10 plays. The dagger came with the overtime. Okay, nice game there going into overtime. Touchdown twice, Alabama A&M, 82 yards, and then they stuck the next dagger in 6 plays with another touchdown, and then that was it. All right, so now in the MEAC, Norfolk State Spartans, they held it down to win over Morgan State Bears 24-21. And again, Florida A&M Rattlers held off South Carolina State 20-14. with Norfolk State there, let's talk about their first downs. 19 for Norfolk State, Morgan State 16. In rushing, Morgan would dominate on that end, 249 to Norfolk's 93. So let's see where we can see some differences here, because Morgan State is actually doing more in rushing, and they're doing more in the averages per rushing, and then it flips back, and that's when Norfolk State did 291 in passing versus Morgan State's 126. Completions, that's when you start to see Norfolk State dominate with 26 to Morgan State's 14. There was one interception for Norfolk State, and then in total offense, they both were pretty much evenly matched. It was 375 and 384. Then you had time possession of the ball, and that really just wasn't a factor, but it just seems like it was a lot more smart football, and they probably had possession of the ball at the time, so then that just took them over to the win, because it was 34 minutes 16 seconds and 25 minutes and 43 seconds for Morgan State. And so when you take the breakdown in the first quarter, nobody scored, so they were tight with each other. Okay, so in the starting drive, it was Norfolk State. He did a completed pass, Otto Coons to Daquan Felton, and then J.J. Davis, he rushed for 2 yards, and then you had a kick attempt, which was good by G. Wilcox. Well, let me go back. There was one touchdown, and that was with Norfolk State, which was 63 yards, and they did 3 plays. And then second quarter, you didn't have Morgan State answering at all. There were 2 touchdowns there, 68-yard and 48-yard field goal. So it was 1 touchdown and a field goal in the second quarter. Third quarter, that's when Morgan State answered back with a 72-yard touchdown. Fourth quarter, it was double touchdowns for Morgan State. Rallied back 75 yards and 60 yards. And then there came the dagger with Norfolk. After 9 plays, they did 66 yards with a touchdown. And that was the daggers, and that sent it over. So that's the score. All right, so let's get into it with Florida A&M and South Carolina State. 2014. I was in the press box for this game. It was exciting time. It was beautiful weather. And here we go. First downs, Florida A&M 15, South Carolina State 16. Penalties, it was 4 penalties for South Carolina State. This was the longest first quarter I had ever sat through in quite a while. And the officiators, the referees, they were doing really good. They were calling everything, and I definitely commend them for that. When it came to rushing, you had Florida A&M 54 and South Carolina State 24. First downs, Florida A&M 15, South Carolina State 16. And then let's go down and take a look at the passing. They pretty much was almost evenly matched. 266 for the Rattlers, and for the Bulldogs, 237. And then in completions, they were evenly matched, 17. Interception, evenly matched, 2 and 3. 3 for South Carolina State Bulldogs, and for Florida A&M Rattlers, 2. Total offense, 320, edged them out. Florida A&M, 2, Bulldogs, 261. 68 plays for Florida A&M, and 70 for South Carolina State. Penalties were 15 of 146 for the Rattlers, and 665 for the Bulldogs. Third down conversions, 3 of 14 for the Rattlers, 3 of 17 for the Bulldogs. Fourth down conversions, 0 for the Rattlers, and 1 of 2 for the Bulldogs. Time possession of the ball, 26 minutes and 37 seconds for the Bulldogs, and 33-22 for the Bulldogs. So here's how this long first quarter went. Florida A&M, they started the drive, And then Jeremy Musa, he did a completed pass to Xavier Smith for 63 yards to the Bulldogs' first down, and there was a touchdown. The kick attempt was good. It was 64 yards to the Bulldogs' 1. Second quarter, double touchdown, a field goal, and a touchdown. 86 yards for the Rattlers, 54 yards after 10 plays for the Rattlers. Third quarters, this was telling right here because the Bulldogs were applying pressure. Defense was on. Rattlers tried to throw long, and because of that defense right there at them, it was not a completed pass. Couldn't even go into the end zone. So with them, like maybe 20 yards from the end zone, they decided to go ahead and do a field goal. And that lets you know that even though there's not any touchdowns right now in the second quarter, they were feeling the pressure. Also feeling the pressure again in the third quarter. They didn't want to take the touchdown. They just went on and did the field goal. Fourth quarter, that's when you had South Carolina State 36 yards after 7 plays at a touchdown, and then 44-yard touchdown after 1 play. And that was it. I have some more paperwork here, but we want to just give some love here to these quickie stats with South Carolina State. You had Kendrell Flowers, Smith Brown, you had Alex James, Tyrese Nick, and you had Corey Fields, Shaquan Davis, Richard Bailey, Kendrell Flowers, Rakeem White, Dyson Roberts, Juwan Moody, Rakeem White, Aaron Smith, Patrick Godbolt, and then you had Green Jr., BJ Davis, Shaquan Davis, in the fourth quarter, 14-yard pass from Fields. In the scheme of things, I would say what a lot of people are saying, that's an excuse, but it's not. You have a lot of seniors that left. This is the champions of the Celebration Bowl, and that they won against in Atlanta, Jackson State last year. But with these seniors gone, you have new freshmen coming in. You literally have what you call rebuild the team. Rebuild the team. So you have to rebuild a team. Everybody has to get their footing together. But as far as when you're talking about conference games, they're still right there. So this is going to be very interesting here on out to see how the game flows. I thought it was a really good rally back that the Bulldogs did when it comes to being down. You just keep playing and you play and you play and you just keep playing, you know, until the end. All right. So I thought that was some really good looks. You know, sometimes even through the opponent's win, you can look at the tapes and you can see where you have kind of backed them down, walked them down, because if you're that close to the end zone, you don't want to take it. So that means that you know that this is a team that's coming with a lot of momentum. So therefore, I'm going to just take that field goal and, you know, just be done with it. That's right. Okay. How you feel, everybody? You doing good? I thank you so much for locking in here with me. All right, so I want to give a good shout out here before I'm out of here, okay? I want to give some love here to Tiffany Dawn Sykes. She is going to be Florida A&M's next director of athletics, and I think that is so cool. She is a current executive senior associate for varsity sports at Dartmouth University, and so she is now going to be the new AD for the Rattlers. I mean, that's so cool. You know, you have the women who are really doing it in the sports. For the MEAC, you have Sandra Stills. Okay? And she got her appointment, and she is the first female commissioner for the MEAC. So I think that's really, really cool. Other new appointments coming in is my Smithite and good guy there, Dr. Anthony Holloman. He is the 11th commissioner for the SEAC. Johnson C. Smith. Okay, and he's a native South Carolinian, so he got appointed. And then, of course, at the SWAC, you have Dr. Charles McClellan. And then for the CIAA, I was one of the first as well, in that first lineup, I should say, not the first, but in the first lineup to interview Jackie McWilliams, who was the first and is the first female commissioner for the CIAA. Yes. So here you got the 4 conferences, and you have 3 ladies. Wait a minute. CIAA Jackie McWilliams, Sonia Stills, and then we now have Tiffany Dawn Sykes. She's going to be the AD for Florida A&M. So I thought that was way cool there. So it's all about empowerment. So that's 2 of 2. 2 ladies for commissioners and the 2 men. And I thought that was cool. We have a lot of wonderful advancements that's happening for the females, and I think that's a beautiful thing always, because you give so much of yourself for something that you really love, then it shows in what you do, and other people, when they can recognize that, that's a beautiful thing. Now also, South Carolina State has Keisha Campbell, okay, and she is the female AD for the South Carolina State Bulldogs. Okay, and so I think that is just all time really, really cool that you can set the bar, and you have the women breaking the glass ceilings. You know, that's a beautiful thing. It's majestic, and it's well deserved. It's not like somebody's just giving it to you. You know, you earn it, and nothing is better than having someone see that you have greatness to earn exactly where you are in life. You know, professionally and personally. All right, so I'm going to say to my ladies,
I can't keep calm, I'm a diva.
Okay? And
I am always right.
Not always right, but hey, we get there with our stuff.
Do you know who I am?
I am a commissioner, and I am an AD. And you are this, and you are that. So I think that that's just wonderful. Let's give another round of applause, everybody. All right, over here I have my beautiful, what I call my Tiffany cup. It's filled with beautiful ice water. Because I spiked my beautiful blood mixture here for spooky season with some nice dashes of beautiful hot sauce. So it's very spicy. You have to give a little pickup of blood. You do. It's delicious. All right, so if you're ready for some football talk, then keep it locked. And let's talk some football. But until then, let's go out with a classic, as a lot of people celebrate their homecomings, and one time for all the HBCU family represent. Here we go.